right, gonna share my screen. Here we go. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Katie Pearson and I am the data manager for the Symbiota Support Hub. And today we are having our first inaugural meeting of what we're calling the Symbiota Support Group. So there are so many Symbiota users across the world and so many different portals, and we're all using very similar tools. And so we are just having these meetings so that we can talk about some of these tools together. And it's also an open forum where we can answer questions. So without further ado, let's talk about Symbiota Support Hub. So our agenda today is we're just going to do a quick review on what the Symbiota Support Hub is for those of you who weren't able to join our iDigBio webinar earlier this month. And then we're going to talk about some new resources that we have, symbiota.org and Symbiota Docs, and how these might help you in the future. And then we're going to talk about the Symbiota Support Hub's new GitHub site, which is related to symbiota.org and Symbiota Docs. And so I'll talk about how all of those kind of intertwine. So, and this site is in GitHub. I'll talk very briefly about what GitHub is, and then we'll talk about Symbiota Docs and discussions. And this is, Symbiota Discussions is going to be a great way to reach out to the Symbiota Support Hub in the future. You can still email us at symbiota@asu.edu, but being able to post things on GitHub is going to be really helpful for you because the whole community is going to be able to discuss on this forum. And then we'll also talk about how you can contribute to Symbiota Docs. This is, again, our documentation site. And if you have documentation to provide or to contribute, we would love your input. This is really a community endeavor. So if you missed the iDigBio orientation webinar that was, I believe, earlier this month, please do, or probably last month at this point, please do tune in. I will go ahead and put this link in the chat.
I got you.
Oh, thanks so much, Jen. And this is where you can get kind of a more in-depth overview of the Symbiota Support Hub, where we came from, where we're going. I'm just going to give you some highlights here today. So this is our current team of the Symbiota Support Hubs. We have our community lead, Dr. Jen Yost, who is here, and I believe Dr. Nico Franz and Dr. Ed Gilbert are here today too. They are some of our leads and management here at Arizona State University. And then we also have our International Community Coordinator, Samantha Oriana. She is also here today. And then Dr. Laura Roja Prado, who is one of our biodiversity informaticians, also playing a key part in the Symbiota Support Hub. And then there's me right there in the center. I am the All Portals data manager. And so I'm helping users with whatever they need to get their data in, get their data out, and then start collections. Whatever questions you may have, I'm part of the team that's here to help you. So the main mission of the Symbiota Support Hub is to provide help desk support for portal data access, publication, sharing, management. We are here to help you. And we're also developing documentation. So this is the help and tutorials that we're going to be showing you today. And then we're also want to be able to spread that word to the larger community. As part of this, we're hosting webinars and trainings. You'll probably see these on the schedule more in the future to improve the community capacity. And then kind of in the broader scale, we're also developing an implementation of a sustainable business plan. So Symbiota has hopefully a sustainable future for the whole community. So we can offer you help in all sorts of things: data migration, image publishing, data publishing to GBIF and iDigBio. So lots of things that we're willing to help you with. And if you're not sure we can help you, just ask. We're right here at symbiota@asu.edu. And one of these things that we're enacting is the Symbiota Support Group, which you guys are all in right now. And this is the first Monday of each month. So that means it's going to be January 3rd, I think, is the first Monday of next month at 12 noon Pacific, 1 Mountain, 2 Central, 3 Eastern, or, you know, do your conversions as you need. And it will always be at the same Zoom link. So this Zoom link that you're in right now. And the purpose is we're going to do a quick tool demonstration or some sort of walkthrough, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A, and these are going to be recorded. Another thing that we're developing, as I mentioned, is Symbiota.org has gotten a little bit of a facelift recently, so you might go look at that. And then Symbiota Docs is our new documentation or help and resources site. All right, so let's jump into today's topic, which is the Symbiota Support Hub GitHub site. And you can kind of subtitle this as getting help and reporting bugs. So how can you talk to us in the future, not just via email? So I first want to just take a brief introduction to GitHub. GitHub, as you might have heard, is used by a lot of coding projects. You've probably seen it in workshops. If you've been with IDIG-Bio or GBIF for a little while, they use GBIF for a lot of things. GitHub kind of gets a bad rap as just being this like thing where code lives and you have to be a really intense coder to deal with it. That's really not what it is. It's just an open source kind of containerized site where you can put documents and code and versions of things. And it just, it's open source. So lots of people can collaborate over GitHub. And then it also tracks versioning of documents and code. And so that's kind of its strength, is that you can figure out what version of the code you or the document you had just by following it kind of in the back end. Some GitHub lingo that you'll probably run into is the word repository, and that just means a collections of documents or code. So our code for Symbiota is in a repository called biokick/Symbiota. And then the GitHub, the Symbiota docs is also in its own repository, which is going to be Symbiota-docs. So it's just a collection of code. If you hear someone say repository or repo, that's what they're talking about, is just a specific collection of documents. So Symbiota docs, as you can see, there's a link down at below. If you also go to symbiota.org/docs, that is also a link that goes straight to this website. And I'm going to pull this in here live real quick. So you can see there are a couple of different guides. It depends on kind of how you want to approach Symbiota or a portal. If you're just a user, someone who's like, I want to download data from InvertiBase, then you might look at the user guide, because this is more useful for like creating maps or contacting a collection or downloading data. If you are a data editor, so not necessarily a manager of data, but someone who is editing data regularly, then there's an editor guide. And then there's also a collection manager guide. And this is where kind of the more heavy hitting administration control panel things are going to be held. So if you're looking for information about importing data or data cleaning, data publishing, downloading a whole copy of your database, that information can be found here. So basically, if you go to your data editor control panel, most of those items are covered right here in the editor guide. And then the administration control panel is mostly covered in the collection manager guide. And then in the future, there's going to be some documentation for developers as well, for people who want to install Symbiota instances and edit it and develop it there. So Symbiota docs, all the content for Symbiota docs is in GitHub. And what this looks like is, okay, bear with me now, don't be scared. It looks like this. So all the content is going to be right here, but you don't have to interact with it there. Don't worry about that. The information that you want to interact with can be linked here. So if you go to our repo page and just click on this link, it's going to take you to the front end site where you'll probably be interacting with it.
Katie, how did you get to the scary looking one? Yeah, that one.
This is github.com/biokick/Symbiota docs. So this is the repository or the repo where all the content is. So if you wanted to in the future contribute to our content on this site, all that information is just in this content page. So each one of these is going to be like, this is the editor guide, this is the user guide. And they all have kind of like shortened codified names. But if you go through, you can see, oh yeah, I see that this is checklist. And if I went to Symbiota Docs, and I went into the user guide and clicked checklist, this is the same path as the path right here. So this isn't super important for you if you just want to use Symbiota Docs or if you want to be in the discussions. I'm just giving you a little bit of background if you're like, oh, I want to be able to like edit the Symbiota Docs and add my 2 cents to this documentation. So each page in the Symbiota Docs is a file in the GitHub Symbiota-Docs repository. Remember, repository is a collection of files. And the Symbiota Docs repository is also where you can find the Symbiota Support Hub discussions board. And so this is what I want to focus on a lot right now. So when I showed you this link before, or this repository before, it looks like this. The 2 main links I want you to pay attention to here are this link over here, which takes you to Symbiota Docs. Also, symbiota.org/docs would take you to this exact same page. But another important piece here is discussions. So that's what's circled right here in this slide. Discussions is where you can interact with the Symbiota community and with the Symbiota Support Hub. So within discussions, this is where you can ask questions, mention bugs, talk about announcements, etc. So just to recap, here we have our discussions button, and then over here, this is how you could view the Symbiota Docs website. So Symbiota discussions on GitHub, if you've ever interacted with like Reddit or any sort of really old forum, I don't know, this was like in the early 2000s when they had forums and you could post comments on the forums and, you know, have your own emojis and all that. That's kind of what's going on here in GitHub, is just like a forum. So it's pretty easy to navigate if you think about it that way. Each of these discussions is just what it's called. It's a discussion. So it is one person has started a discussion. So anyone can start a discussion saying, hey, I'm having a problem with this, or what do you all think about this specific thing? And then anyone can comment on that discussion. So here, Laura put a discussion here, and I could click on that, and I could add a comment. So let me pull this over here. And one important thing that's going to help you kind of structure your discussions is going to be if you look at the categories on the side of this page. So if I go back to my discussions page right here, over here in the categories, you can say, okay, I want to talk about a problem or a bug that I'm experiencing. So you could click on this. And any problems or bugs discussions are going to show up here. Or if you create a new discussion, you can select a category and say, okay, problems and bugs. My portal is not working. Please don't just say that. Please be very specific with what your problem is. But you get the idea. So you can select a category, you can start a discussion, and anyone in the Symbiota universe who is at least connected to GitHub, they can respond because often the community knows the answer just as well as the Symbiota Support Hub does. So the general categories that we have right now are announcements. I believe only moderators can post announcements, but it's a really good idea to subscribe to this or watch this repository or these discussions so that you can get announcements about Symbiota. We also will have a listserv coming soon. There is a category where you can strategize to find new funding. This is where, if someone's like, oh man, I thought about this really great tool. Well, the Symbiota Support Hub doesn't necessarily have the capacity or funding to just develop every new tool that everyone thinks is cool. But these are definitely things that can be written into other grants, like if you are putting in a Penn grant or a TCN, or really any other NSF grant or non-NSF, IMLS, whatever. You can usually put in some funding for the development of new tools. And so if you have multiple people who are interested in developing the same tool, then this is where you might want to start the discussion and say, hey, I think I'm going to write it in here. Can anyone help out with writing this part of the proposal or whatever? So really good place to put that information there. You can also report problems or bugs. You can ask questions in the Q&A. So that can be any question. It can be big or small. It's totally fine to, if it seems like a dumb question, please go ahead and post it. Other people probably have been wanting to ask. There's also a show and tell that I won't talk about too much right now, but that can be where we can post developments about new tools. And then there's also a wish list, which I imagine a lot of you guys are interested in posting because I've heard a lot of good ideas about developments that people would like in Symbiota. So if you have new features or changes that you would like to see to your portal, the wish list is a really good place to put that. All right, so I'm also going to talk about contributing to Symbiota docs, but very briefly. And I already mentioned this. Let me pull up Symbiota docs again. Live. Here you go. And one thing I neglected to mention when I was talking about the discussions is that in order to contribute to the discussion, you do need to have a user account in GitHub, but that's pretty easy to do. It's just as easy as creating an account in a Symbiota portal. You just go to github.com. And then I already have a profile, so it's going to show up here. But in general, you would either see a splash screen that would invite you to log in, or you would see some login information up here. So create a login. It just takes like an email and your name, and then you will be able to contribute to GitHub. And then you can go find this repository here, biokik/Symbiota docs. You could also find that just by going to Symbiota docs here. And then a really neat thing that Laura has enabled in this is that if you ever want to contribute to a specific GitHub page, you can either go up to our contributing page or contributing menu item here. And this will give you some instructions about how to contribute to Symbiota docs. And then if you just see a certain page and you're like, I would like to add more content to this, you can click this edit this content on GitHub link, and then it will encourage you to create a fork and then make your edits, and then you can make a pull request to bring that fork in. Okay, these are really GitHub-y terms, so I'm gonna talk very quickly about what that means. So Symbiota docs sits here in its repository, and there are only a few people who can directly edit what's in the Symbiota docs repository. But if you want to contribute, you can fork the Symbiota docs code. And what that basically means is just make a copy of it, but for yourself. So you have a little Symbiota docs repository associated with your profile. And then you can make your changes, add a page, make some changes to some typos, whatever. And then you create a pull request. And that just means, hey, I have some edits. Will you please pull these into the main Symbiota docs? So when you create that pull request, then our team will be able to look at it and say like, oh, excellent, there's now a page for this. And then we can pull those in as we find them. All right, so that is our very quick introduction to GitHub, Symbiota discussions, Symbiota docs. And at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and open up the floor to some questions. I am going to stop recording.